I never thought I'd find out my only daughter got married, through a Facebook post. Yeah, you heard that right. I wasn't there. No invitation, no phone call, not even a text. Just a shiny, filtered picture of her in a white dress, standing beside a man I'd never met, surrounded by people who probably didn't even know my name. Before I continue, let me introduce myself. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 70 years old. I may not be as young or fast as I used to be, but let me tell you, I've lived enough life to know what betrayal feels like. I've seen joy, loss, and everything in between. And before I go any further, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and write in the comments where you're watching this story from. We love knowing how far these stories reach and how many hearts they touch. My heart dropped right into my stomach. I remember sitting there staring at my laptop, my hands shaking so bad I almost spilled my coffee. I thought maybe it was some kind of joke, some prank, maybe even an engagement party I wasn't told about. But no, the caption said it all. The happiest day of our lives. Mrs. Emily Turner. That was my daughter, my Emily. The same little girl who used to braid my hair in the kitchen, who used to promise me she'd never forget where she came from. The same girl who once cried in my arms after her first heartbreak and told me I was her best friend. And now, I wasn't even worth a phone call. Now, let's go back a bit, because you can't understand how deep this wound goes until you know what came before it. I wasn't a perfect mom, but I tried. I raised Emily on my own after her father passed away when she was just 7. We didn't have much, but what we had, we made count. We'd bake cookies on Sundays, watch old movies together, and on tough days, we'd sit out on the porch and dream about her future. I used to tell her, "Baby, don't forget, your heart will take you places money never can." She used to smile and say, "I won't, Mama, I promise." But promises are easy when you're young. After she left for college, everything started to change. She got busy, and I understood. New life, new people, new dreams. But the calls got shorter, the visits fewer. By the time she got her first big job in the city, she hardly had time for me at all. Still, I held on. I thought it was just part of growing up, that she'd come back around like kids always do. Then one day she called me out of the blue. She wanted help buying a house, said she needed a small favor, just until she got her career settled. I took nearly all my savings, everything I'd built from decades of teaching, and helped her get that house. I told her, "It's in my name for now, sweetheart, until you're ready." She hugged me tight and said, "Mama, I don't know what I'd do without you." Those were the words that kept me warm for years. But over time, the calls stopped again. She stopped visiting for the holidays. I'd call and get, "Sorry, Mom, I'm busy. I'll call you soon." Soon turned into months, then years. The last real conversation we had was about that house. She wanted me to sign it over to her. I told her I'd think about it, and she got upset, said I was being controlling. Controlling. Imagine that. A mother trying to protect the only thing she has left, being called controlling. And then that night, the night everything fell apart. I was scrolling through Facebook after dinner. My friend Marge had posted pictures from her grandson's graduation, and I remember smiling, thinking about how proud she must have felt. I was about to close the app when I saw it, Emily's name. A tag, a white dress, a wedding arch. At first, I thought my heart was playing tricks on me, but when I clicked that photo, the world just stopped. There she was, my baby girl. The same girl whose prom dress I sewed with my own hands. The same girl who used to twirl in front of the mirror saying, "Mom, one day you'll cry when you see me in my wedding dress." And she was right. I cried, just not the way she imagined. Everyone in the comments was congratulating her. "You look beautiful. What a stunning couple. So happy for you both." And there I was, her mother, sitting alone in my kitchen, realizing I wasn't even part of her story anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I kept looking at those pictures until my eyes burned. Every smile, every hug, every person standing beside her. It was like watching someone else's daughter live the life I once dreamed for my own. And somewhere deep inside, something broke. It wasn't just sadness. It was a kind of grief only a parent could understand. The grief of knowing your child has moved on, not just from your home, but from you. But here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it wakes you up. That night, I made myself a promise. If my daughter didn't think I was part of her life anymore, then maybe it was time for me to stop living for her too. Maybe it was time to remind her, and myself, that even the kindest hearts have their limits. And that was the night I decided things were going to change. The morning after I saw those wedding photos, I woke up with a heaviness I hadn't felt in years. You know that feeling when something inside you has cracked, but you can't quite tell where. That was me. I sat at the kitchen table, my old floral mug in hand, staring at my cold coffee. The quiet in the house was deafening. For 70 years, I've lived through heartbreaks, goodbyes, and all sorts of losses. But this one hit different. It wasn't just about missing a ceremony. It was about realizing I'd been replaced in my own daughter's story. She didn't just forget to invite me, she chose not to. That word, chose, kept echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. It made my heart ache in ways words can't capture. I tried calling her. I must have dialed her number a dozen times, my thumb hovering over the call button, my chest tight. But every time I thought about her answering, or worse, not answering, my courage dissolved. Finally, I hit call. It rang and rang, until it went straight to voicemail. Her message was cheerful, distant. "Hey, it's Emily. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." I left a message. My voice trembled as I spoke. "Hi, honey. It's Mom. I saw the photos. Congratulations, I guess. You looked beautiful. I wish I could have been there." I sat there for hours waiting, checking my phone every few minutes like some teenager waiting for a crush to text back. But she never did. Not that day, not the next, not even the week after. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. It was intentional. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew louder. My house, once filled with laughter and phone calls, felt like a museum of memories. Every photo frame on the wall mocked me. There she was, my little girl at 5 years old holding a stuffed bear. At 10, with a missing tooth, grinning proudly. At 18, in her graduation cap, her arm around me like we were a team. And now, she had a new life, a new team, one that didn't include me. One evening, I decided to drive into town. I told myself I needed groceries, but really, I just needed air. Something to remind me I still existed outside that empty kitchen. When I reached the store, I saw her car. My heart skipped a beat. That blue sedan, the one I helped her buy years ago. I froze, watching her step out, holding hands with a man I assumed was her husband. They looked happy, carefree. And there I was, sitting in my old station wagon, invisible. I didn't even know his name. I'd never met the man my daughter chose to spend her life with. I don't know what came over me, but I got out of my car. My knees ached, my palms sweaty, but I needed to see her, even if it was just from across the parking lot. She was laughing, that same laugh that used to fill my home like sunshine. And for a second, I almost called out to her. But then I saw it. The look on her face when she noticed me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't love. It was discomfort, like she'd seen a ghost she wasn't ready to face. "Mom?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I smiled, forcing warmth into my voice. "Hi, sweetheart. I didn't know you were in town. I saw the photos. You looked beautiful." She glanced at her husband, who looked awkward, unsure what to say. Then she sighed almost impatiently. "Mom, I was going to call you. It all happened so fast. We didn't plan a big wedding, and Emily," I interrupted softly. "I would have come even if it was just the two of you. I didn't need fancy invitations. I just wanted to be there." Her husband shifted, clearing his throat. "We should go. We're running late." Emily nodded and looked back at me, her voice suddenly cold. "Mom, I'll call you, okay? I didn't want any drama. You know how things can get?" Drama. That word hit me like a slap. I'd been reduced to drama. I watched them walk away, hand in hand. Their backs turned to me like I was some stranger who'd interrupted their day. My vision blurred with tears, but I held them back. I didn't want her to see me break. Not this time. When I got back home, the silence felt heavier than ever. I sat in the dark, the only sound coming from the old clock ticking on the wall. I replayed her words over and over. I didn't want any drama. What had I done to deserve that? I'd worked 2 jobs to keep her in school. I'd gone without new clothes, without vacations, without comfort, all so she could have the life she dreamed of. And now, that same daughter saw me as nothing but a burden. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and stared out the window. The moonlight cast long shadows across my yard, and I whispered to myself, maybe it's time she learns what distance really feels like. Something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry, and not yet, just hurt. Deeply, painfully hurt. But pain, I've learned, has a way of turning into something powerful when you stop letting it control you. And though I didn't know it then, that moment, standing alone in my kitchen, holding that cup of tea, and was the moment everything began to change. Because soon, my daughter would realize what it truly meant to shut someone out. After that day in the parking lot, something inside me cracked. Not the kind of crack that heals with time and love. No, this one split deep, right through the center of who I was as a mother. For weeks, I tried to hold on, convincing myself that Emily would call, that she'd realize how much she'd hurt me and come around. But every day that passed without a word made that little spark of hope dimmer and dimmer. It's funny how silence can become the loudest noise in your life. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, quiet, almost mocking me. Every ping from a spam message made my heart race for half a second, until I saw it wasn't her. Eventually, I stopped checking. Eventually, I stopped hoping. Then came the final straw. One afternoon, I went to the mailbox to grab the usual: bills, flyers, junk mail. But tucked between it all was an envelope with her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe she wanted to reconnect. My heart dared to believe again for just a second. But no. Inside was a short, polite note. Mom, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to let you know that we've decided to sell the lake house. I'll send you your share once it's sold. Hope you understand. Hope I understand. That lake house wasn't just a property. It was our place. The one I'd worked my whole life to buy. The one where Emily learned to swim. Where we'd roasted marshmallows by the fire every summer. Where her father's ashes were scattered. And she wanted to sell it, without even asking me. Something in me snapped. I called her right away, my voice shaking not from anger but from heartbreak. Emily, how could you? That house means everything to me. It's where your father... She cut me off, her tone sharp and cold. Mom, it's just a house. We don't use it anymore, and we could really use the money. I thought you'd understand. Understand? I whispered. Emily, that's your father's legacy. That's our family home. You don't just sell history. Her sigh on the other end told me everything. That sound, impatient, dismissive. I'd heard it before, from people who'd stopped caring. Mom, I'm tired of the guilt trips, okay? You make everything about the past. We're trying to move forward, that was it. The knife twisting in deeper. I hung up without another word. I stood there, holding the phone, my knuckles white, my breath shallow. It felt like someone had stolen every warm memory I had left and replaced it with emptiness. For days, I wandered the house, touching old photo frames, running my fingers along the walls. I found Emily's childhood drawings in the attic, still taped to an old box. Crooked hearts, stick figures. I love you, Mom, written in red crayon. I sat down right there, on the dusty wooden floor, and cried like I hadn't cried in years. I wasn't crying just because she'd sold the house. I was crying because somewhere along the way I'd lost my daughter. Not physically, but emotionally. The girl I'd raised, the one who used to run to me after scraping her knees, the one who'd once said, "You're my best friend, Mom." She was gone. That night I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavy, the silence unbearable. So I got up, made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and sat by the window. The moonlight spilled across the floor, soft and silver. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made. All the times I'd put her happiness before my own. And for what? That's when the bitterness started to turn into clarity. Maybe I'd spent too long waiting for an apology that would never come. Maybe I'd been holding on to a version of her that no longer existed. I realized then, love isn't about clinging. Sometimes it's about letting go, even when it hurts like hell. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. I told him to transfer the lake house entirely to my name until the sale was properly discussed. He said it might cause family tension. I laughed softly. There is no family tension, I told him. There's no family left to be tense with. For the first time in months, I felt in control. That day, I packed up a few boxes, drove to the lake house, and stood on the porch overlooking the water. It was peaceful, quiet, the kind of silence that healed instead of hurt. I could almost hear my late husband's voice saying, "You did good, Ellie." I sat by the fire pit, watching the reflection of the moon on the water, and whispered, "I think it's time for me to start living for myself now." The pain was still there, sharp, raw, but it no longer owned me. For 70 years, I'd been a mother, a wife, a caretaker. But in that moment, for the first time in my life, I was just Eleanor, and though I didn't know what came next, one thing was certain. I'd never beg for someone's love again, because sometimes the breaking point isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of a woman finally finding her peace. The morning after I reclaimed the lake house, I woke up with a strange mix of peace and guilt. It's funny how those two emotions can live inside you at the same time. On one hand, I finally felt like I'd taken back something that belonged to me. My voice, my dignity, my right to be heard. On the other, there was that mother's ache deep down, whispering, "You shouldn't have to fight your own child to be respected." I made myself breakfast, just some toast and eggs, and sat by the kitchen window of the lake house. The sunlight hit the water, sparkling like nothing bad had ever happened there. For a moment, it almost felt like the old days, back when Emily was little, running barefoot through the yard, shouting, "Mom, watch me jump," and I'd clap, pretending she was an Olympic diver. Those memories stung now, like ghosts reminding me what love used to look like. But life doesn't give you do-overs. It gives you choices, and I'd made mine. I decided to stay at the lake house for a while. No phone calls, no waiting, no checking messages that would never come. Just me, the water, and silence that didn't hurt anymore. I fixed small things around the house, repainted the porch railing, oiled the old rocking chair, even planted some fresh daisies by the steps. It felt therapeutic, like I was rebuilding pieces of myself with every brushstroke and seed. Days turned into weeks. I learned how to enjoy my own company again. I'd wake up early, make coffee, sit on the deck, and watch the mist rise off the lake. Birds would sing, the breeze would play with my hair, and for the first time in years I felt like me. No one's mother, no one's burden. Just Eleanor, but peace never comes without a test. One afternoon, as I was watering the flowers, a car pulled up. My heart dropped the moment I saw it. Emily's blue sedan. I froze, my watering can halfway tilted, water spilling over my shoes. She stepped out, dressed neat and polished as ever, her husband following behind her with that same cautious look he always wore around me. "Mom," she said softly, closing the car door. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her. She was older now, lines around her eyes, a woman grown, but all I could see was the little girl who used to hug my waist and say, "You're my hero." "What are you doing here, Emily?" I finally asked. My voice wasn't cold, just tired. She sighed. "I heard from the lawyer. You transferred the lake house. I just wanted to talk about it." I nodded, motioning toward the porch. "All right, let's talk." We sat across from each other, the sound of the wind between us. She looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Mom, you know I didn't mean to hurt you. The wedding, it just happened so fast. We didn't want to make it a big deal." I took a slow breath, my eyes steady on hers. "Emily not telling me wasn't about time or planning. It was about choice. You chose to leave me out." Her face softened, guilt flickering for just a second. "It wasn't like that. You've just been difficult sometimes. You worry too much, you get emotional, and I didn't want drama." There it was again, that word. Drama. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "Emily, when I raised you, I worked 2 jobs. I skipped dinners, I skipped sleep, I skipped life, all for you. I didn't complain when times were hard. I didn't quit when your father died. I stayed strong so you wouldn't have to. That's not drama. That's love." She blinked fast, her lip trembling, but she didn't speak. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "And when you got married without telling me, You didn't just leave me out of a wedding. You left me out of your life. That house, this lake, everything I built. It was meant to be a legacy for you. But you decided to sell it like it was a piece of furniture. That's when I realized maybe I gave you too much without teaching you what things mean." Her husband shifted awkwardly, whispering, "Emily," but she waved him off. Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time, I saw something real break through the walls she'd built. "Mom," she whispered, "I made a mistake. I was angry. I thought you'd judge me, and I didn't want to fight." I nodded slowly. "We all make mistakes, honey. But pretending your mother doesn't exist, that's a hard one to forgive." The silence between us was heavy. The air carried the smell of the lake, the sound of distant waves brushing against the dock. Finally, she reached across the table, her voice trembling. "Can we start over?" I hesitated, looking down at her hand. It wasn't that I didn't want to forgive her. I just didn't know if I could forget. But then I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I'd once had when I was young and trying to make things right. I placed my hand over hers and said softly, "Starting over doesn't erase the past, Emily, but maybe it can help us understand it." She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. We didn't hug. We didn't say "I love you." But that small gesture, that touch, was enough for now. When she left later that evening, I stayed on the porch long after her car disappeared down the road. The sun was setting, painting the lake in gold and rose. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, maybe this is the turning point. Not for her, but for me. Because forgiveness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means choosing peace over pain. And that night, as I locked the door and turned off the lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the kind that depends on someone else, but the kind that starts quietly inside your own heart. The days after Emily's visit felt different. Lighter, somehow. Not perfect, not completely healed, but different. For the first time in a long while, I didn't wake up with that pit in my stomach, that ache of wondering why I wasn't enough. Instead, I woke up thinking maybe, just maybe, there was still something left to salvage between us. It wasn't easy. Forgiveness never is. It's not some magical moment where everything feels okay again. It's more like rebuilding a house that's been burned down, brick by brick, slowly, carefully, and with a lot of pain in your hands. A week after that talk on the porch, Emily called me. I didn't recognize her number at first because I had deleted it, a small act of self-preservation. But when I heard her voice, soft and uncertain, I knew it instantly. "Hi, Mom," she said. "I was wondering if I could come by this weekend. Maybe stay a few days?" I paused for a moment. The old me would have said, "Of course," before she even finished her sentence. But this time I thought about it. I wanted to be sure, not for her sake, but for mine. "All right," I said finally. "You can come. But understand, Emily, this house doesn't have space for lies or guilt anymore. If you're coming, come with your heart open." There was silence on the other end, then a quiet, "I will." That weekend, she arrived alone. Her husband was away on business, she said. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from carrying too much emotional weight. When I saw her standing there, suitcase in hand, I felt that old motherly instinct rise up inside me. I wanted to hug her, to tell her everything was okay, but I didn't. Not yet. Some things needed to be said first. We spent the first day in silence. She helped me cook dinner. We ate together at the kitchen table, and though no one said much, the air felt softer. The walls that once echoed with resentment now hummed with quiet possibility. The next morning, I found her sitting by the lake, staring at the water the same way I used to when life got too heavy. I brought her a cup of coffee and sat down beside her. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she broke the silence. "Mom, I don't know how to fix what I did," she said. Her voice cracked just a little. "I thought I was protecting myself. I didn't realize I was hurting you." I took a deep breath, feeling that familiar ache rise in my chest. "Emily, life's too short to spend it figuring out who's to blame. But let me tell you something. Love doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means learning from it and doing better next time. She looked at me, tears glistening in her eyes. I was selfish. I was angry because I thought you were judging me for my choices, but I see now that all you ever wanted was to be part of my life. I nodded slowly. That's all any parent really wants, to know that their love mattered. To know that, even when we're gone, the best parts of us live on through our children. She reached for my hand then, the same hand that had held hers through scraped knees and first heartbreaks. And she squeezed it gently. You'll always be part of me, Mom. I just forgot how to show it. That was the moment the years of silence and resentment began to dissolve. Not completely. The scars were still there. But for the first time, we weren't standing on opposite sides of the pain. We were sitting in it together. We spent the rest of the weekend talking, really talking, about her marriage, her fears, my regrets, and even her father. I told her stories she'd never heard before, about how scared I'd been when I first became a mother, about the nights I cried after her father died, but smiled anyway so she wouldn't see. She listened, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in decades, she said the words I never thought I'd hear again. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't need an apology, but hearing it healed something deep inside me. I smiled softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. I know, honey, I know, and I forgive you. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the fireplace with a blanket around my shoulders, staring at the flames dancing. I thought about all the years I'd spent pouring love into others, my husband, my daughter, my friends, and how little of that love I'd saved for myself. That's when I realized something. Forgiveness isn't just about letting others off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of bitterness. It's about saying, I've carried this pain long enough, and it's time to set it down. The next morning, before Emily left, we stood on the porch, watching the sunrise. The light painted the lake gold, just like it used to when she was little. She turned to me and said, Mom, can I come back next weekend? Maybe bring Michael this time? I smiled, my heart full but steady. You can come back whenever you're ready, sweetheart. This house will always be here. But I need you to know, I'm not the same woman you left behind. I've learned how to stand on my own now. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and hugged me tight. Tighter than she had in years. I wouldn't want you to be. After she drove away, I stood there for a while, the wind in my hair, the scent of daisies from the garden drifting through the air. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt at peace. Because sometimes reconciliation isn't about going back to how things were. It's about creating something new from what's left. And that's exactly what I intended to do. When I woke up the morning after Emily left, the house felt both empty and full at the same time. Empty, because her laughter wasn't echoing through the halls, but full because for once, my heart wasn't heavy with anger or regret. It's funny how life works. Sometimes peace doesn't come from what you gain, but from what you finally let go of for years. I told myself that I was waiting for an apology, for some grand gesture that would make the pain disappear. I thought if Emily ever came back and said she was sorry, that would fix everything. But now I see it wasn't about her words. It was about me finding the strength to forgive, even when I never got what I thought I needed. Forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for you, for the quiet moments when the world stops, and all you have left are your thoughts. It's for those nights you lie awake replaying every word, every argument, wishing you could change the past. It's for the mornings you wake up and realize life has gone on without your permission. That's the bitter truth I learned. No one ever truly gets closure. We just learn to carry the pain differently. After Emily's visit, I started doing small things for myself again. I repainted the kitchen, fixed the squeaky porch swing, even joined a local book club. At first it felt strange, like I was betraying some invisible rule that said mothers must always put everyone else first. But as I sat there in that little cafe, sipping coffee with people my age, laughing about things that didn't hurt, I realized how much of myself I'd forgotten. I had spent so many years defining myself by the people I loved. My husband, my daughter, that I forgot who Eleanor was. The woman before the heartbreak, before the loss, before the silence. One evening, I was sitting by the lake when the sun began to set, painting the water in soft shades of orange and pink. I remembered the day my husband proposed there, his nervous smile, the way the wind caught my hair. And I remembered Emily running along that same shoreline as a child, her laughter spilling into the air like music. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They didn't sting. They simply existed. Like soft echoes of a life I once had, now blending with the woman I'd become. That night, I took out an old photo album I hadn't opened in years. There were pictures of Emily's first birthday, her graduation, our family trips, and then the wedding photos. The ones I hadn't been invited to. I used to look at those pictures and feel anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But now, I looked at them and felt something else. Acceptance. Because maybe, just maybe, Emily's journey was never meant to include me in every step. Maybe her mistakes were her own lessons to learn, just like mine were. And maybe that's what love really is. Letting go enough for someone to find their way back, if they choose to. The next day, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Emily. I hadn't received a handwritten letter from her in decades. Her handwriting was shaky, a mix of old habit and emotion. "Mom," it began. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about love, forgiveness, and second chances. I don't deserve your kindness, but I want to be worthy of it. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on us." I must have read that letter 10 times before folding it neatly and placing it inside my journal. I didn't cry, not this time. I just smiled, because for the first time in years, I knew she understood. Later that evening, I stood on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world felt calm, quiet, almost sacred. I realized then that growing old isn't just about losing people. It's about rediscovering yourself in the spaces they leave behind. I thought about all the pain, the silence, the distance, and how it had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more at peace than I'd ever been before. If I had to live it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing, because even though it broke me, it also rebuilt me. I looked up at the fading sky and whispered softly, "Thank you, life, for the lessons, for the love, and even for the pain." And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. Healing doesn't always come with a happy ending. Sometimes it's simply the quiet understanding that you've survived, that you've lived through the storm, and you're still standing, softer but stronger than before. Emily came by again the following weekend, just like she promised. This time she didn't bring flowers or gifts. She brought herself, and that was more than enough. We sat together on the porch, watching the lake shimmer under the afternoon sun. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to as a child. For a while, we didn't say anything. We didn't need to. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. It was peace. And that's when I knew that no matter what happened next, I'd be okay. Because I had finally learned the most important lesson life could ever teach me. That forgiveness isn't forgetting what someone did. It's remembering who you are in spite of it. So, if anyone out there is listening, anyone who's ever felt betrayed, abandoned, or left behind, hear me when I say this. You can survive it. You can rebuild. You can find joy again. I'm 70 years old now, and I've learned that the heart never truly stops hoping. It just learns to beat differently, softer, wiser, and with gratitude for every single day it still gets to feel. And that's the real ending to my story. Not the pain, not the betrayal, but the peace that finally came after.